Hey, welcome to our webinar today, the 2026 Retail Intelligent Briefing. My name is Greg Busick. I'm President and Chief AI Officer of IHL. With me today is John Martin, Head of Content for BlueStar, and James Cordy, Director of Marketing for BlueStar. It's great that you guys are here. Lee Holman is joining us as well. Thanks for joining our webinar. Special thanks to Intel and BlueStar for sponsoring today. We're grateful for you guys. And with that, tell us who you are, where you're from, who's your favorite sports team. Let's get the chat going because we always want to be interactive here. This is also the place where you can add all the questions and everything else on the chat on the right side. And before I do that, I did want to make an announcement here that hey, our AI analyst is now available and you can use it for a lot of really cool things. I even used it in the Comet browser the other day and let it go out and analyze the story and bring in IHL data as to what this story meant for retail. For instance, the shutdown, what segments would be impacted, et cetera, for that. And the IHL analyst does that. So this is perfect for business development. For those of you that can't support an analyst contract, there you have it 24/7, 365. It pulls IHL data, it pulls leads for you, all that fun stuff. You can try it for free at that link or that QR code. We're really excited about it. It's doing things that's even shocking me that it's able to do and pull as people start to use that. But that's 30 years of my knowledge and data in there that you guys get to use for that. So with that, we're going to turn the cameras off so we can focus on the data for everybody here, and we'll jump right into the data itself. Let's start off with the inflation. The government says we're at about 2.9% inflation with the CPI and cores at 3.1. However, if you look at the data in detail, you'll notice that there are certain things that are driving up inflation and they really are not your everyday expenses. The have-tos, if you look at the have-tos, we're at 1.7% according to the government. And if you strip out shelter, and I'll explain that in a second, we're down at 1.3. What is in the data, which is kind of crazy for those of you who've never heard me speak on this before, is 40% of that shelter number is related to a made-up number of what they think they can rent your home for that is 6 months in arrears. So we're looking at 6 months old data on that shelter number. So that's why I said if you strip that out, and as rents have been coming down in particular, and mortgage rates are starting to come down, that drops significantly that cost. So that's what you look when you look at this type of thing. But heading out, we've got a reduction in gas prices from where we were a year ago. Food at home at 2.7%. We still have high costs related to food away from home in restaurants, but people were addicted to eating out, and I've got a slide on that. But apparel has been flat or almost negative for many parts of the year here. So when you think of the back to school season and all the apparel that's purchased for that, that's a good thing for the economy. So we've been running around 2%. This is my favorite inflation index, Truflation. It brings a Nielsen rating type of inflation gauge to what's going on in the marketplace. We've been running at around 2% really since March. We went under that and we've been hovering right around it. Now it's gone up a little bit the last couple of weeks as we were dealing with some of the tariff stuff hitting with regards to other parts of the economy that's not necessarily retail. Gas prices are down from a week ago, but they were up for the holiday for Labor Day weekend. Why that's important is every penny sustained is about $2 billion that moves one way or another for things. The one that's a little more impactful for inflation in retail, however, is the diesel prices, which had gone up maybe about 50 cents in the last 6 weeks or so. That is starting to come down, but there was a big delta year over year, and that has shrunk dramatically. And we're actually above our cost last year for diesel prices. I don't know what that reason is, but that multiplies through the market with prices related to all the other goods in the economy. Eggs is a bright spot. Prices are down now 85% from the peak. I wanted to give you some good news because most of the stuff in here is not positive news for the economy. So I wanted to give you something that was good news. What is driving inflation is auto insurance and property insurance rates and that made up number. If you take those things out, we are well below the 2% increase that the Fed had targeted. So let's look at GDP real quick. So the real GDP increased 3.8% in the second quarter after they revised it up. Now you'll see this number for consumer spending, its contribution and points to that GDP. However, we want to dig in deeper. That was not retail. So if you looked at the data, retail trade was actually negative in contributions to the GDP in the second quarter. Obviously, the tariffs had a huge impact on that. Number one, finance and insurance driving that. But positive is accommodations and food service. People continue to travel, continue to eat out, and that's driving up things. But retail trade is down. Now there are some things that are looking good next year that most people have not factored into. So the changes in the big beautiful bill, or whatever you want to call that, or big ugly bill, whatever your political persuasion is, the extension of the original tax cuts, plus the increase of the SALT deduction from $10,000 to $40,000, combined with a decrease in interest rates that's going to come, is going to dramatically increase retail trade, particularly in the housing and home goods sector, which has been struggling. So just keep that in mind. Things are getting better and will get better there with things as crazy as they are right now with shutdowns. So when you look at it overall, GDP there, Q1 was down, Q2 was revised up, but it's very important. This came out yesterday. I have not been able to test it, but basically data centers driving the first half of 2025. It's the spend around data centers, around those communities of data centers, et cetera, that is driving the economic growth right now, which is a little concerning as we start to get concentrated, and we can talk about that later. Jobs. Now, the latest numbers, they didn't come out from the government because of the shutdown, but the jobless claims, they tumbled to 218,000 with the last one that we saw, the last report, I think, which was August report there, which was well below the estimates. That is data that makes the Fed pause, which the Fed shouldn't pause. If you've listened to any of our webinars, they should have started dropping in March, in our opinion, for the broader economy. Now, if we didn't have AI and data centers right now, we would really be in a recession as a country right now. Job openings and unemployed, that has shrunk now to where it's about the same. The problem, there's a disconnect between skill sets and what jobs are open. And that is leading to long-term unemployment. And it's particularly jarring for those who are new grads. I have two new grads at home, both looking for jobs, both getting closer, it looks like, thankfully. But you'll see the underemployment rate, or what they call relative unemployment for younger folks that went to college and got a degree, is running over 60% right now. So when people start talking about bubbles, this is the bubble right now. It's the college bubble is the bubble. This is the rate in which college tuition grew over the last 30 plus years, the 40 years overall. And you look at it, 700% increase in tuition. And yet, what's happening in the last 2 years is an absolute gutting of first-time employment for folks who have a college degree. In fact, people going into high school, in high school right now, I can't recommend college for them. I just, the trades, all the stuff, the trade schools is a far better option than going on to university right now, unless you're in a specific field like nursing or medical or some of those fields. But even engineering and coding has seen a huge drop off in the number of people that have a full-time job within 6 months that is related to their education. It's just striking how disconnect between what is being taught at college and what employers want. And there is a big disconnect between those two things right now. So this just gets to attitude. The number of people think that they're going to find a suitable job has spiked up here in the last several months, living in negative. The wage growth, which used to be switching jobs, is also changing. So just like we have in housing, where we have baby boomers who are not moving out of their houses, which means the less of the new starters can get into those homes, we have the same thing now with regards to jobs, where people are staying in their jobs now instead of switching. So that is creating less opportunities for those that might come in at that point. So that is not bright, and it's not great news for the economy. So Let's look at debt. Debt continues to rise. It's driven mostly by mortgage debt as the price of homes have gone up, but we are not looking at the situation of a bubble that we had previously. We have a major issue where we're missing tons of homes that we need in the market, and interest rates are too high. So once again, as interest rates come down, that's going to free up money that can go into retail. So the number of accounts, the number of credit card accounts is growing dramatically there, but it's not so much that is the debt that's fueling everything. It's actually we've got debt in other areas that's driving these increases, which is the student loan debt and the auto loan debt. Auto loan debt surpassed student loan debt for the first time in 2023. And has stayed above that. The average car loan now is 84 months. And I thought I heard a statistic that something like 70% of car owners are upside down on their loans right now. Their car is worth less than what they owe on it. And people are trying to move into new vehicles, and they're getting into a situation where they're getting sold to them, but the length of the loan and the size of the loan just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So that is something that we've got to keep an eye on. But debt overall is not the big issue. It's really home ownership and the cost of housing is the issue. It now takes 47% of your income to own a home. Now, if you put a car onto that, and car payments and home payments onto that, and you don't have much less to use than most average families, the middle income or the average income in America. And that is one of the problems, is this economy right now is highly centralized on the top 10% of incomes that are driving most of the economy. And it's got to get more favorable to everybody if we really want to see things go. We've got a 57% affordability gap between income needed to buy versus the actual incomes that people have overall, which means because of private equity investors getting in, driving up home prices, this really is a top 10 to 20% of folks that are able to buy a home simply because things are out of reach and what's going on. So the American dream of, I don't know, 2.1 kids in a house with picket fence and all that stuff, that is not a reality for a lot of consumers, and we need to see that. So I don't want to get into politics and all that fun stuff. It's both sides are responsible for that, but we do have a major issue when it comes to consumers. So if you're working in the dollar space or the everyman space, it's a real struggle for retailers in that space. But that being said, even though we've got 4.7 million homes less than we should have, according to Zillow and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, we have 35% more people selling than people that are able to buy those homes right now in the marketplace. And why this is critical for retail is once you have people are going to homes, particularly first-time buyers, they buy everything, and that drives all aspects of retail. So, and that's our issue. Only 24% of home buyers right now are first-time home buyers, and that is a major issue for retail long term. So right now, everything's concentrated at that top higher incomes for things. And this chart is particularly concerning because this drives not only socially, many of the social ills that we have being driven by 30-year-olds or under males, the fact that they're not marrying and buying homes and has dropped significantly is a major impact when we think about the growth of retail overall. I guess they just charged the guy yesterday at Pacific Palisades fire, was 29 years old, an Uber driver that set the fire there. I mean, we've got this major issue in this age group where we don't have jobs opportunities. We're not giving economic opportunities out there. That's a social issue, but it's also an economic issue for retail. So some good news. Let's give you some good news. The rates are coming down. They're coming down relatively fast. 10% of all new loans are ARMs. They're betting that interest rates are going to go down. I believe interest rates are going to go down, and I believe we'll be down a good 1% to 2% by next year once there's a change of ownership. That lower interest rates allows more people to participate in this economy. And that's the part where I think the Fed is 6 months behind on what the real needs are, because those people in the bottom 60% of incomes are really struggling right now. They're making decisions based on food and on medicines. That those are decisions that nobody should have to make in an economy that's growing, in the economy that's the size of ours. So that participation for everybody in that economy is huge. So we saw new home spike 20.5% in August. That growth seems to be down in September, but once again, we don't have that actual numbers there, so we're using other folks' numbers. Fed's fund forecast, the market's got it set to where it's going to drop significantly down into the range of 2.9%. Right now, I believe, where are we now? I think we're at 4%, somewhere in like that. We still got a ways to go here for things on this Fed market. And once again, I firmly believe we are late, and we're probably a point off of where we should be right now, based on my view of the data for things as an analyst. And that has led to consumer expectations. That team up north, their school puts this out. As all you guys know, I'm a huge Buckeye fan. Here they put this out, and it's a striking negative number for the folks up looking forward. So this index of consumer expectations, a negative 30% change year to year, is striking of what we've seen here. And a lot of this, once again, becomes interest rate related and just the ability to buy things. So we had inflation and interest rates that are too high. So the part that concerns me is this box in the red, and that is the highest income folks who have been propping up the economy. Their consumer sentiment dropped, okay, in the last month or two. This is both tariff related as related to job, the belief that they're secure in their jobs there, that is starting to cause people to pull back. And that is the concern for retail there. Thanks, Lee, for putting in the chat what the funds rate was. I saw that. So this is the number that shows you this. This is the top 10% of incomes that are running about 50% of all the spend in retail right now. And those guys are starting to pull back. That is concerning. That is concerning. Now, I think it's going to get better next year, once again, as funds are freed up for a lot of people, but that's the thing. Health insurance, the rise in health insurance, obviously the shutdown is all about that right now. So I don't want to belabor this point here, just the rise in cost of health insurance is a major issue in cost for families. All that to say, retail sales should be down, but they're actually up year to year. There is a retail therapy type of thing that's happening here that is hard to explain, other than the people that are making money on stocks and Bitcoin and other things are keeping the retail sales number up, as well as our addiction to eating out. So where are we for the year? You've got two numbers here. The first numbers I just showed you were the NRF CNBC model, and on the left you've got the government data. And this stuff has been off, usually in quite a large way, where the data has actually been more positive on the government side than on the actual credit card data, which is what the NRF and CNBC monitor is. That's 9 billion credit card transactions. In this last month, it's showing very, very strong growth in the actual credit card numbers here. Now, is that all debt fueled there, or are people paying these things off? So your pure play is down at the bottom. Michael, you're asking 12% growth there for August versus August of a year ago for that. But that eating out number, so 7.4% increase is incredible, and it just shows that we are addicted to eating out as Americans. Inflation adjusted, we're up 1.8% for the year, and so we're still positive. We shouldn't, economically, you look at the numbers economically, and it's so bad on paper that this should not be up, but we are up. So I did want to talk briefly about hospitality, since our friends at BlueStar and Intel focus on this stuff. Our addiction to eating out is just insane. We are up 35 times. This almost looks like NVIDIA stock, here. In the last 48 years, we've gone from 42 billion to 1.45 trillion dollars in eating out. But the major change is, you used to eat in the restaurant if you ate out. It was a dining experience. Now, 75% of all meals are consumed off premise. And that impacts many different segments, from C-stores to fast food and to traditional restaurants and grocery stores as well, mass merchants. You've got to have prepared food that's ready to eat right now in any environment. And how do you develop your systems for that? That being said, looking at Christmas, Adobe came out and said they're looking at 520% growth of online shopping for this season. This is happening particularly in cities as a result of the aspect of things being locked up. It's just become so unpleasurable to shop in many stores that's driving more and more people to use e-commerce for their shopping. Another data point, this just came out this morning from eMarketer. They're from McKinsey had a study here, and 65% of consumers say they're going to shop for Christmas and shop for the holidays before Black Friday even starts this year. So a lot of shopping is being done right now. We just finished up Prime Days again, which is like two or three days this year, shopping days. Every other retailer has their competing events as well. That drives a lot of that holiday season shopping forward, and we're not even to Halloween yet. So, I think the holidays are going to be muted because of the economy overall, but it's going to be earlier, so it's not going to be as backloaded for retailers. So we got another webinar coming up that'll go into this in more detail. So let's get to your world. Let's get to the tech that's moving the needle. So we just completed a study that we do normally with Chain Store Magazine. I think we've done it 23 years now with them and RIS News previously. What tech move the needles here? So quick definitions. A leader is 10% growth in either sales or profits, if I talk about them. A laggard is flat or negative. Somebody that's average is in between 0 to 10% growth for our definitions here. So the main thing to hear is winners are hitting the gas on IT spend. This is crazy here in the sense that they are really putting the pedal down when it comes to IT spend, growing at 4 times that of the laggards today. Some of this growth you can imagine, but this is literally like me racing Usain Bolt. Every step he's getting further and further away. And when you look at the data and what priorities are, there are things that are popular overall that the winners say are not needed because they did that 2 years ago because of the amount of budget they're putting into IT spend. And this is particularly true with AI. We mentioned online, but 87% of revenues still have a store component in what we're seeing. So online obviously is growing. The online component is growing, but the fastest online component that's growing is an online sale with a store involvement and fulfillment, whether it's local delivery, BOPIS, click or collect, ship from store, all of those things. The store is still relevant and the store is changing dramatically. So when you look at the technologies that are up to date, no surprise that traditional point of sale would be number one. But I wanted to bring your attention down to self-checkouts, payment terminals, and electronic shelf labels, and then finally consumer mobile checkout app, because as you look at what's going on going forward or things that are moving the needle, those are the technologies that are starting to jump out as separators between who has it and who doesn't. So when you look at emerging technologies, we've got voice, the ability to communicate there, particularly from the parking lot to somebody to pick up an order for BOPIS and click and collect. G being really strong. That is particularly true among leaders of what they've got installed. The retail media networks have grown like crazy. We're seeing now we're moving more and more towards shelf intelligence. So you'll see shelf labels be a big thing, but the rise in the edge computing to support all that infrastructure at the local store there. We have RFID for checkout. We've never measured that separately than just overall RFID. And then I want to bring your attention down to the bottom to computer vision. Rapid gains, rapid increases of what's happening in computer vision with the tech advancements there with the chips. So what are the categories of technology when deployed correlate highest to what's happening in sales growth? Okay. And right now, the highest one is having a single data lake. Okay. So you have a data lake and you use a tool like Snowflake or Databricks or something else to start using that data for AI. That is the number one tool out there that is starting to drive growth, sales growth. Microservices is number two at 82% higher sales growth than those that are not using it. Shelf labels number three at 77%. RFID number four at 70%. And that technology that everybody in the press thinks is dead, self-checkout. Nope. People using self-checkout, 62% higher sales growth for those technologies. Now, when you look at profit growth, on the other hand, it's RFID that's the leader here. And then those people that have updated modern point of sale software, those are the ones that are seeing the big drive, the highest drive of sales difference, or sales growth difference than those that don't. Once again, the data lake here, headless commerce, shelf labels again, and geolocation. Geolocation used to be higher a couple years ago, but it's now not as separated as more people start using geolocation within their stores and in their regions for marketing. And with that, I'm going to take a break, turn it over to John and James to talk about BlueStar, and then we'll come back for 2026.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much, Greg, and hello, everybody. I am John Martin. I'm Senior Content Marketing Manager at BlueStar, and I'm joined by our Director of Marketing, James Cordy. Our friends over at Intel asked us to get on here to discuss and share our insights about what's happening in the retail market and the kind of technologies that are enabling retail modernization. Now, a lot of you probably work with us already or are familiar with us, but if just in case you're wondering, well, who is BlueStar? Why do they have thoughts on this topic? I'll turn that over to James to explain that to you.
Sure thing, John. Hi, everyone. I'm James Cordy. I'll just quickly say about BlueStar for those of you that are unfamiliar. We're a global distributor of specialty B2B hardware and software. We are headquartered in the greater Cincinnati, Ohio area, but we have office locations and warehouse locations throughout EMEA, Latin America, and Canada as well. You see on screen just a kind of a sampling of some of our core vendors. I think at this point we carry over 300 hardware and software OEMs at this point. And some of our key markets are obviously retail, hospitality, as mentioned previously. We're also very strong in supply chain, government and public safety space, healthcare and field service. And of course, being in a space that is in some ways very commoditized, we have designed lots of programs, services, and then as well as two marketing guys here on the call with you guys, content that is designed to help partners win more deals. We'll go into some of this stuff in a little bit of detail later, not great detail, but a little bit of detail. But I did just want to call out for any of you out there in the audience that may be part of value-added reseller organizations, managed service provider organizations. In Q1 of 2026, we're launching the BlueStar Academy. This is a true value-add training program. We have kind of a laid-out curriculum, but for any of you out there that have sales teams that are perhaps evolving, moving into some of these new emerging technologies, we are looking for suggestions. What do you all need in terms of education? We'll go out and build those programs and make it very, very affordable for your team to learn from them. So with that being said, John, I'll go ahead and pass the mic back to you, my friend.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Well, now that you understand a little bit about who we are, let's take a quick look at some of the hot trends and technologies that retailers are exploring and seem primed to explode as they strive to capture customer loyalty, increase their revenues, combat labor shortages. The first big one, machine and computer vision. Simply put, this is using cameras connected to computers, the cloud, software, often driven by AI, to perform simple functions, make rapid decisions, and analyze visual input. In retail, that could mean, like you're seeing here, cashierless checkout. We all know about the Amazon Go experience, and while some people may think that wasn't super successful, it's still out there, it's still running, and there's a lot of other retailers that are adopting this. I've seen these camera-assisted cashierless checkout in a few airports. That also lends itself to inventory management and loss prevention. Next up is crowd management, which you're seeing here. Intel has a partner called Wait Time that we've worked with in the past as well. They got their start when their founder was frustrated waiting in long lines and missing big plays during a hockey game. So they designed this software to track how people move in spaces like arenas, stadiums, conference centers. But this has a place at other retail as well. Most retailers are spending a lot of time thinking about how their stores are laid out, where to place items that they want to move, and what draws customers where. Computer vision can really help identify those patterns, find the hot spots, and understand what happens as people navigate a store. All right, let's talk about AI because we have to talk about AI. We mentioned it already, but like all businesses and industries, there is a desire to understand how to make AI work for retailers. We've been championing here at BlueStar, the idea that It's time to stop talking about what AI could do and start focusing on what it is doing, the tangible outcomes, real world use cases. A few of those examples that are here on the screen, you've got personalization. AI can analyze the online and in-store buying preferences, the spending habits, preferred shopping times. They really help retailers identify their best current and potential customers and keep them coming back. You've got demand forecasting. There's an old adage in the sports world that the best ability is availability. Well, the same thing goes for selling products as well. If you don't have it, you can't sell it. AI helps predict future sales trends and optimize inventory to prevent waste. Chatbots, virtual assistants, agents, most of us are pretty familiar with a lot of that stuff. 24/7 chatbots are typically available on most websites these days. But the next big step is agentic AI, which is getting a lot of buzz. You might have heard that term. But if you're looking for a practical example, think about a store associate who's out on the floor with a handheld mobile computer or a tablet. They're already doing some kind of work, scanning inventory, maybe, checking on what they've got in stock. Customer approaches, they ask a question. Now, back when I was in retail, I had to trek my way to the front of the store, get on a computer. I might be stopped by another customer on the way. Another associate might have been using the computer. I find there's a deep checkout line that I need to jump in and help out with. Takes you off task for a while. What if instead that associate could literally ask an AI agent on their device, get an immediate answer without ever leaving their workspace? That's the kind of stuff that AI can help them out with as well. Fraud detection, big part of the payment space. We'll actually talk about that in another segment here in a little bit more too. Dynamic pricing, it's something that's been happening in restaurants for some time, but retail's getting in on the action also, using AI to spot trends, find competitive changes and strategies that are happening with their competition, and make adjustments in real time. And finally, data analysis. Greg mentioned earlier the data pool. There's a lot of information that's out there. Every retailer is collecting more data and more info on their customers and what's happening in their stores than ever. But it's pointless if you're not gleaning insights from it, and AI can help folks do that. All right, let's turn over to the next trend here, which is retail media networks, targeted advertising. A lot of retailers are already utilizing in-store and window digital displays for corporate ads, for sales information, providing directions, or just drawing attention to a store. But there's even more opportunity here with what we call programmatic advertising. Simply put, this is delivering third-party ads on signage that is already in use. So you may already have a display in your window. Well, what if every now and then between the stuff that you already have in existence for your store, an ad from McDonald's pops up and recommends the latest extra value meal or whatever, and come down the street and get one. It is a way that a retailer can get a little bit of cut of that advertising on a device that is already in use. And so do the technology providers. It's a simple lift for some recurring revenue. Plus, that even extends to like a local and regional marketing as well. You can target advertising for your retailer's local audience and kind of create an ecosystem of networked stores and programs happening. Let's say there's a big game coming up for the local team. I know everybody was shouting out their favorite teams in the chat when we got started. Let's say you could have some ads that are popping up promoting a limited edition jersey or a deal on some wings from the local eatery to get ready for the game that evening. All right, let's jump to our next trend, which is RFID. Now, it's obviously a commonplace technology that has been out there, especially in the world of supply chain and manufacturing for some time. And also some of the big top retailers have been mandating it for a while for their suppliers and distributors as well. But there are additional trends that we're starting to see tick up as well. There's item level tracking. So let's say you get a crate in, and this is a great example in this picture of it. You're a fashion boutique, you get a crate of 300 shirts. Well, just knowing that you have a crate of 300 shirts is not quite enough, because some of those shirts may be in 5 different colors. They could be 6 different sizes. You get a lot more inventory transparency at another level when you start going down to item level tracking. The next big piece of this also then that lends itself to is contactless checkout. You'll see that here in the next video. A simple but very effective concept combined with the item level tagging. Customers can collect their purchases. They drop them in a bin at checkout. The items are instantly read. Payments collected. They're on our way. We spoke to a company called EXO. You see them here on the screen. We had them on our podcast who talked about deploying that technology. And I've actually seen it in use at the Cincinnati Reds stadium, where you go to the team shop, you grab some items, they give you a bag, you drop it in the bin, make your payment, you're on your way. The employees don't have to camp out at the checkout stations. They can be out there helping folks out. All right, let's talk about our last trend here, which is soft POS or soft POS. Stationary point of sale, it's old school at this point. Modern retailers, they really do want the ability to take payments from anywhere on any device. So and I know that we and a lot of our partners, we're still out there selling enterprise POS terminals and mobile devices. Those are our bread and butter. But the bottom line is that there are retailers that just will continue to use consumer devices, or maybe they're using enterprise devices already for other purposes that weren't necessarily meant for payments, and they want to have that added flexibility without having to go out and buy a whole new set of hardware. Well, soft pause is the way to do that. An example of a company that we had at our big VARTech show recently is Mika Flex. They offer soft pause for any Android device. It's a simple app to get set up and then turn an existing device into a payment enabled one. It's secure and it offers that real-time fraud detection that is powered by AI as well. This is perfect for pop-up retailers, mobile sellers, those service industries that need to get paid on the go. You see the note there of plumbing and HVAC. So those technicians, if you have them come into your home, they usually have some kind of a tablet or device that they're already doing job orders or taking pictures or whatever they need to do their work on. But what if that also could take all of the payments and manage that from that device as well? This is a kind of a small market at the moment. Only about less than 10% of North American merchants are actually using SoftPOS, but the business is expected to grow from about 102 million last year to 324 million by 2030. So there's a big growth opportunity, and now's the time probably to get in on this. All right, those are just a few of the emerging technology trends that we and our partners are exploring in the market and expecting to be in demand sooner than later. So, James, I think the next question a lot of these folks might have on their mind is, all right, so this sounds good, but how's BlueStar helping address those needs?
Well, what a great question that is. I mentioned up front that there are a number of programs we've put together over the last couple of decades to do just that. And I want to touch on a few of those. We'll start off with our vetted solution bundles. So these are tried and tested combinations of the right tech that can be dropped into a retail business with minimal disruption. You don't have to go out and build these things from scratch. Our partners at Intel refer to these as market-ready solutions. This concept has been a significant part of our joint strategy to kind of foster a partnership mentality and tap into software companies that are already part of Intel's ecosystem and bringing them over to our channel as well. So, as illustrated here, you can see, and to be clear, these options, these logos you see on screen aren't the full world. These are just illustrating the idea that with BlueStar, you can choose from existing vetted solutions, and also you can build out your own, kind of combining that with the idea of creative financing. Years ago, we introduced a program called Hybrid SaaS, which I know by its name can be a little confusing, but what it means is that if you don't have your own financing mechanism to bring these solutions that include hardware and software and value-added services together at one monthly cost, that's something that BlueStar can help you offer to your end customer through our finance partners. So if that's something you're looking for, BlueStar is a company worth partnering up with. Moving on, Demand Lab. This is actually very much my world and my baby in a lot of ways. It is one of our great differentiators as a distributor, is that we are very much a marketing organization. So for partners of BlueStar who are also working with our OEM vendors, this is a program that you all can leverage. We can get pretty in the weeds, pretty sophisticated with some of the techniques. And again, this is end customer focused marketing. So whether we are leveraging platforms like LinkedIn for targeted lead generation and demand gen, or going on site to one of your end customers and creating high-end video case studies that can be leveraged in a number of ways, or sending out direct physical mailers, for those that maybe aren't as digitally adept. Not everybody's logging into Facebook or LinkedIn every other day. We've got some more traditional methods of getting in front of those folks. And then lastly, we found that for some of our more localized partners that perhaps don't want to or aren't interested in competing at a national level, so to speak, local billboards are still a fantastic way to get strong offers out in front of folks who you can service locally in your market. As well, Tech Connect. I don't know if we have any software partners in the audience today, but Tech Connect is a program designed by BlueStar, and the goal here is to help software companies embrace the specialized IT channel. You see pillars on screen here. Some of the things we do is if you're interested in building out a dealer channel, we have a huge global audience of folks we can put you in front of. You can tout the benefits of working with you, what it looks like to make money together, and we can help you recruit those indirect sales partners. As just mentioned, we can always help you out with the creative financing, end user demand gen, and as well, if you have a business that's here in the US or Canada and you're looking to expand globally, we have our Global Care program that can help advise and take your business international. Lastly, again, John and I both have a a soft spot in our hearts for content. So we've got a couple of different things worth quickly noting. Number one is the BlueStar Nation podcast, of which John is a co-host, although I've slightly cut him out of the graphic here inadvertently. Apologies, John. We've
That's all right.
published
People see enough of my face.
Yeah, well, these folks may or may not know us as well. Anyhow, we've published over 200 episodes with industry thought leaders and experts. We touch on retail and hospitality regularly, but we also touch on a variety of other industries and markets. And then lastly, our Blue Star Nation companion piece, which is Blue Star Nation blog article. We do a lot of end customer surveying, often in partnership with our OEMs, where we go out and talk to prospective customers of you all and find out things about their buying habits, their plans for the future, and all that good stuff. What I always like to say is we do this so that Blue Star's resellers and MSP partners can design better sales approaches. That is really what our content North Star is, so to speak. John, do you want to take events? Do you mind jumping in here?
Sure, not a problem. I mentioned our big show earlier, VARTEC. This is a huge production that we put on every year and invite our partners from all around the world to attend. This year's show was down in the Bahamas. I honestly think it's one of the best ones we ever had, but it's a deep dive 2.5 or so days of networking, education, getting hands-on with technology. We have a trade show that runs for about 7 hours combined between the 2 days, where people can get hands-on with that technology. That software aspect that we were just talking about with that Tech Connect program, we make a point out of inviting as many software companies as possible to this show every year. And in fact, each year, the ones who were there for the first time, who've never been there before, we give them an opportunity even to get on stage during one of our general sessions and talk about who they are and what they're looking for in partners. Again, it's the idea of that we want to bring folks together and keep building out this partnership ecosystem to help folks learn and understand about who they are. But that's not all we do on the event side. We also have a roving tour that goes around the US and Canada called our 2U tour. We always show up at RSPA's events as well. We're a strong partner with them. So if you ever attend those, you usually will find us there. And we also make sure we send folks out to the NRF show and similar shows every year. Our goal of those is to connect with existing new partners, as well as really stay on top of the trends in tech that's impacting the retail industry. For those that don't travel or go to shows, we also host our own webinars to educate on new products and best practices. Look, if you want to learn more about us, find out all of these things that I mentioned by visiting BlueStarInc.com, or even better, follow us on LinkedIn to keep up to date with our latest news and insights. We also post a lot of fun content there to break up the scrolling monotony. So we're a pretty good follow, even if you're not hyper engaged with us. Thanks so much again to Intel and IHL for giving us this opportunity. Greg, we'll turn it back over to you.
When we look ahead for things going forward, the tech priorities, when you look at it as an overall view, you see that it's pretty much the same that we've seen for the last several years, with the exception of the cleaning, training, storing data is starting to be more and more important for retailers. It's when you get under the hood that you start to see greater things of what's happening in this space. The guys mentioned computer vision. We're seeing a 561% increase in the adoption and purchase of computer vision in the next 2 years. Headless commerce, 445%. Every one of these things, over 256% growth from where we were a couple years ago. Some of those things you saw were already moving the needle for things, but now seeing strong growth. The ability for consumers to check out on their own. If you followed us at all, you know we are huge fans of Sam's Scan and Go technology to check out on your phone now. And now with computer vision, it's just basically walk out technology. RFID has been a long time winner. We're still seeing that growth go at 292%. I will tell you that other than mobile devices for managers, this is the number one thing that technology we've ever seen in terms of a separator between winners and laggards. RFID, the winners, sales winners were I think 160 times more likely at one point to be using RFID than those that weren't. Shelf labels, as we talked about, and that single data lake, once again, to get your data in one place. Now, this last subject we want to go in and is really fascinating, and it shows a potential crisis, honestly, a security nightmare out there. And that is, where are you with your movement to Windows 11 from previous generations here? So Your blues here where they've already upgraded. The reds are where we are right now, saying they're planning upgrades. You see a large movement in operating system change, just being fed up, particularly in self-checkout there to an alternative OS altogether. The purple is the group that said they're buying an extended support plan, but the orange is people that don't plan to do anything. And they are literally sitting out there as potential security risks. And it's the POS ones and the self-checkout that are the most concerning. Kiosks tend to have a life of about 2 years. So I can understand where they wouldn't upgrade the kiosks. They'll just replace new kiosks. But when it comes to POS, self-checkout, PCs at the store level, this is quite concerning from a security standpoint. Another thing we measured in the study, which is really fascinating, is the view of retail headcount expectations in the next 2 years. And one of the things that popped out in the data is the striking difference between the senior executives and the director and below titles that participated. At the store level, the VP or higher level said 62% said we're going to have fewer people working in our stores in 2 years, whereas the director and below, they said 60% would have more people working in their stores in those 2 years. And you go down the line and you look at it, and you sit there and say, oh gosh, with all the news on AI, that makes perfect sense. However, that is not what these people are saying. If you look at it, there's not a huge difference between what the VP level and the below and higher and the VP and below. In fact, the VP and above saying, we've been doing more with less for a long time. And we've been looking at things like self-checkout, which isn't necessarily AI directly. We've been looking at automation, different automation engines, different things we're doing in the supply chain, etc. We've been looking at that forever because we haven't been able to get the people to work for our companies and in our stores. And as a result, they're expecting less people to be working, but the people that are below VP level think it's all AI's fault. And it's getting a bad rap for that. So that was the last piece of major technology discussion. Want to invite you to our next webinar, which will be on October 21st on the shelf intelligence, specifically around how do you manage and use computer vision related to the shelf. That is the link for that. And once again, now we are open for Q&A. So I want to invite the guys on while you guys are looking at that or waiting for that. If you want to fill out a survey about this webinar, we'd appreciate it. And let me invite everybody back on. James, jump on as well if you can. There we go.
Got it.
All right, Lee, go ahead.
All right. James and John, are there any other emerging technologies that you guys are watching for retail?
Sure. I think I'll take this first, James, if you don't mind. I think one big one is obviously robotics. A lot of that tends to be happening more in like the manufacturing and supply chain space, or most people think about that, but it's starting to happen in retail too. You're seeing bots that can roam up and down aisles in a grocery store, for example, and keep tabs on inventory, figure out what's hot, what's not, where stock needs to be, and what stuff needs to be moved around, as well as back of house. Biometrics, you're starting to see that come up in the payments conversations. Some of it, it's not, like putting your face or fingerprint on file in a store. It's actually potentially using your personal device, your own phone that scans your face or gets your fingerprint or whatever, and using that as the connective point to make a payment within a store. Obviously, edge computing is a big deal. Understanding it, this is something Intel talks about a lot, and we always are up to be part of that conversation. The idea of making the most use out of whatever compute systems are already in existence within a retail space. So let's say it's not Christmas time and everyone's not rushing in and they're opening up every single lane. You might have 3 or 4 lanes of your business, or maybe 1 or 2 cash registers that just aren't in use most of the time. Why not put that compute power to good use and use it to run some of the new cutting edge stuff like computer vision, like AI? So it's just kind of figuring out ways to redistribute what already exists in stores into new channels and new places to run some of the emerging technology. And then I'll just reiterate once again those AI agents. I talked about that briefly earlier as part of the AI revolution, but I think that agentic AI on devices is going to be a game changer for a lot of retail environments to help their associates on the floor do more and get quick answers to questions for customers or for their own work and what they're doing in their day-to-day jobs without having to run to a back room or go find a manager or go up and check a computer somewhere. James, I don't know. Do you have any other technologies you're paying attention to?
Well, I think you hit it pretty well, John, but I did notice a question in the chat about if we have any AI software partners that are a part of our vetted solutions program. And I'll reiterate a couple, which was Wait Time for crowd intelligence, which is a really interesting one to look into. And then there's another one called Visibility. It's spelled VSBLTY, I'm pretty sure. But Visibility can help retailers enhance the guest experience with proximity-aware messaging. So if you can imagine a digital sign somewhere in a store, that it's aware of its context and giving people messaging based on what's nearby, which I think is a really cool use case. But if that's something you're interested in learning a little bit more about, we've got one-pagers on a lot of these solutions we'd be happy to share.
I like to make a joke all the time that tech startups, software startups love to take all the vowels out of their names for some reason. Like, I get it's a marketing differentiator, but I think it's fun.
It is fun. Agreed.
All right. Greg, what's the impact of retail of the government shutdown?
Oh, wow. It's going to be minor with the exception, I think, of your grocery stores. And the reason for that is if all those people that have been furloughed now, they are cutting back on their shopping trips right now. They're cutting back on brands right now. And yes, they're going to get paid, but they don't go back and buy more food because they didn't buy it back then. So I think that's going to be a permanent hit to those folks. I think it's going to be a temporary hit for the restaurants in particular because people will end up not eating out now, and they will, when they catch up, they'll eat out more, and they might trade up. Instead of McDonald's, they're now going to Cheesecake Factory, and then Cheesecake Factory they might go to Perry's or Fleming's restaurant. All of that is in play. I don't think it's going to be a long-lived thing, but it is a hit that's not going to be recoverable. I think the bigger concerns come in is what happens with the debt load that they have. Do they miss car payments? That sort of thing is a broader economic thing. But for retail, I think those are the two sectors. Nobody's going to go. I don't think they're going to stop doing their prescriptions unless they just don't have the money for it.
James and John, has there been a power shift in your view between retailers and consumers?
Yes, definitely. I mean, if you think back to 20, 25 years ago, what you had to do to get information about a product or figuring out what you wanted to buy, I mean, most likely what you had to do is go to a store. You had to go to stores, you had to price shop, you had to go from store to store to store, make comparisons. Maybe you were a subscriber to Consumer Reports magazine or something, to get some of those insights. But more than likely, you were doing most of that work on your own, which meant the retailers kind of had the power. Because if you didn't want to do that work, you pretty much would settle for whoever was willing to give you a decent deal or just had what you were looking for when you first went looking for it. Well, obviously now we all walk around with one of these things in our pockets that we can get tons of information that we never had access to back then. So yeah, that shifted all the power over to the consumer. And that's why retailers are concerned about, hey, how do I get it back, some of that back, or how do I figure out how to make a play for ourselves in that world? That's why we talk about all this modernization stuff. And it's why we are so, have so much of an emphasis on the technologies to help retailers modify their business practices, stand out, become a little bit more modern, and understand what it is that they need to do in order to draw customers in. Right now, your goal is to create an experience for your customers that will make them want to continue coming back, talk about what they experienced and what they went through at your store. I think if you're just wanting to be a commodity retailer, just like I've got stuff, come buy my stuff, you are probably not going to survive for too much longer in this particular retailing.
Yeah. Okay.
Completely agree.
Greg, what are your comments on the penny rounding issue that's coming up?
Interesting. It's certainly going to make things easier. It's long overdue. There will be a one-time short bump. Maybe 1% increase in sales overall as a result of it, but that would be a one-time deal. I don't think it's a long-term impact. It does simplify things, but you're dealing with less than 30% of transactions now are cash. So I don't know, how's that work? If you pay credit cards, you don't round up. I don't know enough about it, but if you're in cash, you just don't get the pennies back. So is that going to change credit card behavior? No. You're not gonna use cash more or less because of that. So I think it's a non-event, something that should have been done a long time ago. It's ridiculous how much more we spend making the pennies than in the actual value, but I don't think it's a long-term thing. Maybe a short-term increase.
It's a government program. Of course, costs more. James and John, what does small, medium, and large computer vision system, and they said BOM, look like?
I don't know that John or I are either of us are qualified to answer that question. So bill of materials. What does that solution set look like?
Yeah, I can jump in. It's really changed. It's really changed. If you guys have not looked at Halo or looked at folks like Ultra AI and the solutions that these guys are bringing to the table to drop this cost down below $1,000 and under $250 on hardware in some cases, it's really striking at what you're able to do. Part of this thing with the computer vision is the LLM models that are being used are general purpose models that are now getting added training on top of them, and they're large models, which means it takes a large amount of compute today. However, the other part is just driving that down cost wise by getting to a fine-tuned model just for that specific use case. And then you have specific things, maybe it's loss prevention, maybe it's self-checkout, that sort of thing, or just checking shelves or demographics, but it's focused on that one use case, and then she can drive the cost down.
Gotcha.
Thanks, Greg.
Perfect. Okay. Greg, for you, again, are we in an AI bubble?
Wow. Jump right into it. No, not right now. We're still very early innings. Every NVIDIA chip, I heard this the other day, and every NVIDIA chip right now has 12 customers for it. That is the demand of what they're dealing with. I think if the bubble occurs, is because we are doing build out before the culture of large organizations can fully take advantage of AI. This is equivalent to taking a battleship and turning it into an aircraft carrier while you're in the middle of a war and you're shooting. AI can't even figure out how to make that picture. I've got a cool one, but it looks like it's blowing the planes off of the runway. It kind of put runways on the outside and with planes on it, and the guns are shooting over the planes as they're there. But it's extremely difficult. And the cultural change, particularly in perception, and this came up at Super Saturday. We had 3 people. One was very aggressive with Tractor Supply, very aggressive with AI, but they've been growing at 15% a year. So everybody looks at it as a force multiplier in their organization. Dollar Tree, on the other hand, has been slowing down and closing stores, and their folks are getting hit harder. Their customers are getting hit harder. They are looking at it, and the people inside look at it as it's going to take my job because business is not so great. And then we had another that says, no, we're going to be slow adopters because of the legalities of it, because they're a manufacturer. But when you think of this cultural piece of it, that over communication that is necessary for if a company's not doing well, that is required, is very, very hard work. And we're not, the people that bolt on AI to existing processes might get a 20-30% increase of what they're doing. The people that remanufacture the process for AI will see a 50, 60, even 100 times increase in productivity in that area. We have some tools, things were taking me 4 days to do, to find information, to find the stories, that are now taking me less than 30 seconds to hit the button and have it find the stories, and now I have to edit down the stories to the most compelling stories. That's a whole different animal for things, and it can find a lot more than I could find. And so, but you get those kind of productivity hits when you redesign the process for what you're doing. And I think that's the bubble, is if the current level of chips going in and there's not enough companies that can transform to take full advantage of that, there may be a bubble there because there's a desire to move on to the next level chip. So Rubin chips or whatever for the next one. But I think we're still very, very early in this. This is not like the .com bubble by any stretch. The people making the investments are the most profitable companies in the world. The biggest concern is just that it's so much of the economy. That's the biggest risk.
Okay. We're 5 minutes past the hour, so back to you, Greg.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for joining. Once again, you guys, those that join us a lot know that we wear 2 hats here at IHL. Our next event that we do every year for Retail ROI is our Super Saturday Analyst Day in New York. We're doing what you do every day, like VAR Connect and other things. You do that at this event, and kids get clean water. They get education there. It's free for retailers. We only charge vendors to participate. I think Ladies Night at the Bar. We have great content. We call it Tech and Tears. I would love to have you once again for that. And with that, we're going to wind it down. And thank you guys. Thanks everybody for joining, taking an hour out of your day. And we really appreciate you.
Take care, guys.
Bye
Thanks,
bye.
everyone.